So that T wave is the last wave, and that's representing the relaxation of the heart. If we put this all together, you guys can effectively, you can, by just looking at an EKG and seeing where the abnormality is in that EKG, you could tell exactly what's happening in the heart or what the problem is in the heart, right? We know that the P wave is showing stuff in the atria. What happens if the P wave looks funky? You know you have like an atrial condition, right? An atrial fibrillation, an atrial flutter maybe. One of those are the only two that I believe you guys will have to know for your future classes is AFib and A-flutter, which is why I want to go through them real quick. So AFib, and these are in your PowerPoint from last week, at the very end of your PowerPoint from last week. So flip to that. Okay. AFib, what does that word fib stand for? Fibrillation, right? Fibrillation. What do you think when you hear the word fibrillation?
Giving some electric shock.
It's an abnormal electric activity, though. Just think of it as static, okay? Just static electricity. We just have vibration. So it's considered disorganized electrical activity of the atria. We don't have a good P wave anymore. All we have in this area, what comes after the P wave?
QRS.
QRS, right? Instead of having a solid P wave in this area, what do you think we get? Just a bunch of stuff that doesn't make any sense. So what does that tell you about the atria? What are they doing? If all you have is static electricity, I'll give you a hint. They don't actually beat. What are they doing? They're never getting a good shock. They're just kind of wiggling around, right? This is what the atria look like in somebody with AFib. They never beat strongly. All they do is just kind of wiggle around, right? Doing the wiggle. They don't have very much. They don't have any push to them. So somebody in AFib. We've got our QRS and T wave. If you're an AFib and that blood's never getting sent properly down into the ventricle through the valves, right? If you're an AFib and those ventricles are just vibrating around, what do you have to worry about in that patient? What happens when blood starts to kind of pool in the corners? And this is what happens in AFib. Blood pools in the corners. What happens when blood pools? Why is that bad? It starts to form something nasty.
Blood clot.
Blood clot. AFib equals clot. That's a bad thing, right? So what do you think most people with AFib heart rhythm are on? Blood thinners. There we go. Blood thinners, right? So that's a disease process thing here, and you're going to see people with AFib are going to be on some heparin, maybe some warfarin, really low doses. They can just take low-dose aspirin as well. Okay, that also helps to avoid clots. So AFib looks like this. A-flutter is very similar. Okay, welcome. A-flutter is very similar. So what's this called here? The first wave? The P wave, right? Second one?
QRS.
QRS. Good. And third one?
T.
T. Good. People with a flutter look like this. Okay, so they've got too many P waves. But there are still P waves, there are just too many of them. You got a green coat now. Got a 3-to-1 P wave to QRS ratio, okay? So we see 3 P waves for every 1 QRS, and that is going to be your definition of a flutter or atrial flutter. These people will also be sometimes be on blood thinners as well, depending on how bad that flutter is.
Is that what this is on the back or no?
Huh?
Is that what this question is on the back, or is that something different?
Yes, that's part of the questions on the back there.
Okay.
So what I have for you guys here is a little cheat sheet. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to go around MedTech and ask students just random questions that aren't in my class, because I can find out a lot about what you're going to have to know later on. Like the 4th and 5th quarter students, I'll ask them what they're working on. Because I'm just getting an idea. Did you guys already get those? Yeah, you did. I'm just getting an idea of what you guys need to know. And talking to instructors, I found that it's important. I'll make more copies of these. I found that these are the important ones to know. Okay, so this is your cheat sheet. This is what the most common abnormal rhythms look like. You got some notes in it. NSR stands for normal sinus rhythm. And that is a normal looking EKG, right? With just the single P wave and the QRS and the single T wave there. So EKGs can tell you a whole lot about how that heart's working normally, right? If you see a messed up P wave, where is the problem in the heart itself? Atria, good. If you see a messed up QRS wave, where do you think the problem is in the heart? Ventricles. Ventricles, right? Because that's where that big signal comes from, is those ventricles contracting. So I guess here, just one more tip. You see another funky rhythm on there, and I'll make more copies for those of you who don't have it. You see another funky rhythm on there. It's called the fanged QRS. Fangs like teeth. So you see this here, the double fang, right? The teeth coming down. That is going to be a bundle block.
Which one is it?
That is the block. It says block there. Yep. You see, this is my QRS is a little bit weird. It's going to be a little bit more like this. That's a bundle branch block, and that is also a problem with the ventricles. So what happened there is, you know how we said that signal, after it gets to the AV node, it kind of drag races down to each ventricle. It's supposed to arrive at each ventricle at approximately the same time. Well, what happens with the bundle branch block is one of these lanes here, we got 2 lanes, right? Mm-hmm. One of these lanes here gets blocked, and so you don't see that signal arriving at the same time. So you see a staggered QRS. You see one, and then you see another, because they didn't reach the ventricle at the same time. And so this can even tell you about where in the heart specifically you have that abnormality. What do you think might cause an abnormality on an EKG? Like a previous event that happens in the heart, and then you have an abnormal EKG.
Heart attack.
Heart attacks, right? Because what really are heart attacks? What happens to the heart muscle? What happens to heart tissue after a heart attack?
That.
It gets destroyed, right? So if, let's say that heart attack, that vessel was blocked somewhere at the top of the ventricles or in between the ventricles, and all the tissue died here, that person would probably have to be on a pacemaker, because now no longer are those routes open, right? They have to make detours, and I've seen this. We were dissecting the heart the other day in lab, and we opened up the pericardium, and we saw, and then we cut into the heart, and we saw all these like wires. I mean, it looked like a bionic man. I mean, some of these people had 1, 2, 3, or 4 wires that they literally take that bad wiring and they tap into it from an external source. So it's they'll pinpoint where the problem is, and they'll just put a detour wire in there. It's pretty cool, actually, the way that they can fix it. Alrighty. Any questions on the normal EKG? And again, for the quiz, guys, I'm not expecting you to identify every different heart rhythm. Okay, I just want you to know what a normal sinus rhythm looks like and what each event in the heart means. What the P wave, the QRS, and the T wave means for the beating of the heart. So that's just for you to take with you and use for your other classes, because I know, I take a peek at other instructors' exams when they're on the table, and I know that they'll give you a rhythm and ask you to identify what it is, especially that eighth letter one. They like that one. Any questions?
Most elderly have AFib as a diagnosis.
Huh?
Most elderly have AFib as a diagnosis.
Yeah. Why is that? Why do you guys think that is?
Age on
Yeah.
the heart.
As the heart ages, just like everything else ages in the body, the nodes also start to age, right? And if those nodes aren't firing right, you won't get a solid P wave. So the heart tissue starts to break down, and those nodes start to misfire just a little bit. Okay.